Today, we become legends.
So these Iceberg videos have become really popular lately in basically every form of like online culture, where you basically take facts about something and there's like the tip of the iceberg, which are fairly well-known facts but still a little bit obscure, and then as you go further down the iceberg all the way into like the depths, you get to facts that like very few people will know. And I decided, you know what, Smite fits quite well for one of these. There's a lot of like random obscure facts about Smite that people probably don't know about. I even have a few videos on these on my channel actually, and I thought it would be interesting to do. So let's get started with the tip of the iceberg here. There's going to be 4 different levels for the iceberg, and as I said, as you go further down the levels, there are more obscure facts. So kicking it off with the first level, the tip of the iceberg here, we have you can buy items in the enemy's fountain. This one I feel like is fairly well known. A lot of people have popularized this. You can basically run into the enemy's fountain and buy whatever you want. You take a lot of damage for it, obviously, but you can just like run in and buy a power potion or something if you want to like flex and troll. Guan Yu's release, you know, very known one, I'm sure. I have probably multiple videos that discuss how overpowered Guan Yu's release was, but it was by far and away the most powerful release we've ever had. Way stronger than like Bellona, Baron, Suku, all the other ones people complain about. Relics used to be actives. Once again, something you kind of needed to be around a while ago for, but has also been like kind of kept in the history, I guess. So you may know of this one even if you didn't play back then. Relics basically used to be called active items. You would buy them for 300 gold, and then they could upgrade twice for 600 and 900. Kind of similar to relics, how they can upgrade once for 500. And they also generally had branching paths where you could choose like 1 or 2 options at the end. I preferred relics myself, but yeah, they used to be in the game. Mercury being the fastest god in Smite by only 1 movement speed. This one's pretty funny. Mercury used to be slower than some gods. Like for example, for mana had 380 movement speed, and I think Mercury had 375 or something like that. But his lore is like being the fastest god alive, so they gave him 381 movement speed, which is 1 movement speed point more than all the other like fast gods like Vamana and stuff like that. Spacebar jumping over Mercurial and Yana's portal. This one's also fairly popular, and I have talked about it on my channel before. Spacebar jump is supposed to have 0 gameplay impact, but for a long time you could spacebar jump over a Mercury ult if you timed it perfectly. 4,636 hours to get the max account level. Yeah, this is calculated based on the amount of XP you need for level 160, which is several million, I believe. And based on the amount of XP you get per like minute spent in the game. It would take a total of 4,636 hours to get to max level of game time. That's not including any XP boosters or rewards for events, stuff like that. Kukulkan used to be Ao Kuang, Honbats used to be Sun Wukong. Probably fairly well known here. I mean, Kukulkan literally has Ao Kuang's old model as a skin. But basically, Ao Kuang originally had Kukulkan's kit and a different design that was given to Kukulkan, and Ao Kuang was re-released as the assassin, or the magical assassin we know of today. And Sun Wukong's original kit was what Honbats has now, and that was given to Honbats, and Wukong was re-released with his new kit. The Jesus portrait on the old Joust map. We have classic Joust back now. I'm not sure if the Jesus portrait still exists on it, but back in the day, because obviously everyone memes about the fact that Smite should add Jesus and they're not going to do it, but they added like a portrait on the old Joust map and they moved it around every patch so people could find it as like a little Easter egg. It was pretty cool. Speaking of Easter eggs, the Clash statue Easter egg. This is probably like maybe the most known fact on the entire list, to be completely honest with you. You can hit the little statues on Clash. You get 1 structure damage per one that you hit. So if you've ever seen anyone with 1 structure damage, or like 1 on the end of their structure damage in Clash, that's because they hit one of these statues. If you hit all of them, you light up the pyramid Easter egg. Rituals, very much ingrained in Smite lore at this point. Rituals were basically like relics you could put in your consumable slot, so you could buy like for 1,000 gold or something, you could buy just a combat blink, and it didn't take up a relic slot, it's just put in your consumable slot. You could buy like, your entire team at the end could buy teleport to gods, and one guy goes to the enemy titan, you 4-man teleport to him and end the game. Absolutely ridiculous. They said they might add them back, but we haven't seen them in 4 years. They were removed in Season 4, so I don't know if they're coming back, to be honest. Siege was originally 5v5 with a dedicated jungler. This was on Siege's original release. Found to be much more fun with just 4v4 2 lanes, because a dedicated jungler is not really necessary on Siege, given that there's only like 4 buffs and they have like very, very short uptimes. And finally, I just thought I'd put diminishing returns on here, DR. It's a lesser known fact about Smite, but probably one that you may have known of, especially if you watch my channel, because I rail about diminishing returns and stuff like that all the time. Basically, when you get hit by a CC, further CCs that hit you are gonna CC you less. That's the basic idea of diminishing returns. Alright, let's get into the shallow water here. So this is slightly below the tip of the iceberg. We're underwater now. We had the class changes, so Nemesis, Thor, and Raven were originally warriors, became assassins, and Vulcan, Hades, and Guan were all originally guardians. Vulcan and Hades became mages, Guan Yu became a warrior. Ganesha has the highest damage ability in the game, believe it or not. His ultimate hits the hardest out of any ability, more than a noob assault by a decent margin. Just obviously, you're not going to stand in a full Ganesha ult for the entire duration, but if you do, it has the most damage in the entire game. Hercules ulting into Cabrakan walls for an insta-kill. This one was pretty funny. When Cabrakan was originally released, his walls did weird things with Hercule. You would throw Hercule into it, and because the walls make like a half circle, Hercule would just bounce off the walls really, really fucking fast, repeatedly, over and over again. And since Hercule does half damage every time it hits them, you basically took like 3,000 damage instantly. It didn't do like infinite damage because it halves every time, so eventually you're getting to where it's only doing an extra like 10 damage, but the fact that it bounced like 10 times a second between the walls, it just basically insta-killed people, which I thought was pretty funny. Xbalanque was added on the Mayan calendar Doomsday. This is 21st of December 2012. I thought that was a really cool fact, the fact that they like added Xbalanque, the first Mayan god by the way, on the date that the Mayan calendar predicted the world would end. I think that's a really cool little tidbit. Thor's wall used to do damage. On Thor's original release, his wall slowed, it didn't stun, but then they added some damage to it afterwards. Originally, it just slowed and didn't do damage. Then they added damage to it, and then they took the damage off and made it a stun, and that's how Thor wall came to be. Soul's abilities at release hitting towers, no idea why this was really the case, but her 1, 2, and 3, not her ult actually, but all her basic abilities hit towers for some reason, so it just added even more tower pressure to an already insane, like, tower pressure god. Midas boots, these are pretty cool. They were basically bought by supports. There were some boots way back in the day that gave you gold generation. Obviously, that was taken off of boots and put onto, like, Guardian's Blessing and now the new starter items and things like that. But back in the day, supports would buy Midas boots for additional gold per 5. The Shake and Bake, this is kind of similar to Hercules and Cabrakan insta-kill combo. Basically, old new Arl, which is now Ganesha's ult. You will put it down, and then you just pick someone up with Fenrir and shake them between the walls of the new Arl repeatedly, and the way old new Arl worked, it's slightly different to Ganesha ult. Every time you pass through the walls, you took damage. So if Fenrir just shakes you between the walls 10 times, you take 10 ticks of damage, you die. That's basically the idea. Bakasura's ult minions, back in the day when Baka was like originally released, the minions that he actually ate were the ones that he vomited up. So if you ate archer minions, you'd vomit up archer minions that ranged attack people, stuff like that. I thought it was pretty cool, whereas now he just has like his own unique kind of minions that he vomits up. And that'll be it for the shallow waters. Let's move down. So we're getting into some hopefully fairly obscure facts right now. Aside from this starting one, to be honest, maybe I shouldn't have put this one down here because I feel like a lot of people know about this now, but the beta side jungles, basically in the closed beta conquest map, you had pretty extensive side jungles with like buffs and stuff on the side of duo and solo lane. These are kind of returning slightly, you know, duo lane has like a little mini side jungle now with a camp you can do. It's not anywhere near as large as they used to be, and there's nothing in solo, but yeah, way back in the day, you had extensive side jungles on the side of each lane, so maybe they're kind of working their way towards that, you know, with adding these little bits to the sides of the lanes. Maybe they'll full on do side jungles at some point in like season 9 or 10 or something. Minotaurs, these were the original Titans. Before they added Titans to the game, it was Minotaurs. 10v10 Arena, originally way back, 10v10 Arena was planned. The reason this was scrapped was because of server load issues. You know, having 20 people in one game, the servers just couldn't handle it. You all know high-res servers, right? Maybe they could do this now. You know, I imagine the server quality has improved significantly in like the 5 years since this was like planned. The focus mechanic, this is a really interesting one and probably quite obscure as well. I bet a lot of you haven't heard of this one. The focus mechanic was you buy this stat and your CCs last longer based on how much of the stat you have. So for example, if you had 20 focus, your CCs would last 20% longer. I think it had a cap of 40%, just like CCR and CDR. So you couldn't go like absolutely insane with this and make your stuns last 5 seconds or anything like that. I mean, unless you're Changa, I guess. But yeah, focus, terrible mechanic. Who wants enemy CCs to last longer on them? You know, if anything, they should just be like mechanics to make them last shorter. It feels really bad when the enemy just buys max focus and hits you with like a 1.4 second stun that should have been a 1 second stun. So yeah, that was removed like way back. This was back in like closed beta or something. This was before even I played, but I can imagine how terrible it would have been. 1300 magical protections. This one's pretty funny. Original ESET 3. They changed it recently, but original ESET 3, before like they reworked it to give it extra range and a shield and stuff like that. It gave you percentage magical procs. So if you had 365 magical procs, the maximum, and you hit 12 targets with a 3, so like 2 minion waves grouped up. Not going to happen, but it was possible. You could hit all of those targets and get 1300 magical protections for a little while. So like Scylla would ult you and deal like 200 damage or something, like a full power Scylla build. Kraken equals Fire Giant. This is referring to the original Fire Giant being the Kraken. This is shown in like an alpha video. If I can find the video, I'll put it on screen for you. In Smite's alpha, like before it was even released to the public, the Kraken was going to be like the original sort of world boss in place of the Fire Giant. But then obviously they made Fire Giant, they gave Kraken to Poseidon. And finally, the Ares ult Aegis cancel. This was in a fairly recent video of mine, so if you've been watching my channel lately, you may have seen that video, you'll know about this one, but if you haven't, you probably don't know about this one, because it's pretty obscure until I kind of covered it. Basically, Ares could cast his ultimate, and then, you know, the enemy are going to beads, because they don't want to get pulled by Ares' ultimate, and then as the enemy beads, you pressed an old version of Aegis Amulet, which was the, you know, relics back in the day, and it would cancel your ultimate and refund the cooldown. So yeah, you could just ult everyone again, and then they have no beads because they used them the first time, and then you pull them in. Pretty ridiculous bug, to be honest. You know, probably one of the most powerful bugs we've ever seen. Alright, and let's work our way down to the final level, the depths of the iceberg, the very obscure facts, hopefully. Hopefully you don't know too many of these ones. We have the extra jungle buffs from beta, so there was a health buff that just gave like health regen. I believe it was 50 HP 5, so 10 health per second, basically equivalent to a constant health potion. There was the protections buff, which gave 50 of each prots. Completely insane. I don't know why they ever thought that would be okay. You know, 50 of each prots early game is absolutely ridiculous. You know, almost a mantle of discord worth of prots just for picking up a buff. And then there was also the cooldown buff, which gave 15% cooldown. That was merged onto mana buff later on. The other two were completely removed. Although I guess health buff kind of came back in the form of green buff in Season 8. But moving on from that, you could carry multiple buffs at once back in beta. So that's what made this absolutely ridiculous. You know, you could carry health, protections, and speed all at the same time. So you would have like 50 of each prots extra, a constant health potion ticking, and extra movement speed. Like Odin back then was absolutely ridiculous because Odin had a protection buff in his kit back then. I think it was his 2, like prior to his rework. So you pop your 2, get extra protections, pick up the buff, get 50 of each protections extra. You were basically invincible throughout the entire early game as Odin, like literally invincible. It was completely stupid. Bastet's 3 doing magical damage. I recently also learned that Artemis 3 did magical damage at one point as well, so that's another one. Maybe there have been other abilities as well, but yeah, for some reason Bastet 3 and Artemis 3 for a long time just did magical damage. No idea why. Don't know what coding error they messed up to make that happen, but yeah. Surviving executes. This one's interesting. Once again, if I can find a clip for you of Bacchus surviving Thanatos execute, this is where I found it from. I'll put it in the video. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it or not. Basically, executes, the way they're coded in the game, they don't insta-kill you. They deal 9,999 true damage. True damage not affected by protections, for those that don't know. So you can't just build a ton of protections to reduce the damage of an execute, and it does 10,000 damage, basically, so who's going to be able to survive that? But the way percentage damage reduction works, or percentage damage mitigation, is that it does affect true damage. So, like, if you have 20% damage reduction, it's going to reduce that true damage of the execute by like a pretty substantial amount. And way back in the day, you would have like Bacchus passive or his 1. I'm not sure which part it is that gives the mitigations. It's either his 1 or his passive. So you would pop that. You would buy like Spirit Robe and a bunch of other percent mitigation items. Someone would pop on the Thanatos percent damage reduction things. You would stack all that together, and then when he ults the Bacchus would live. Because the execute would only do about 1,000 damage or something, so with enough health, you can survive that. Pretty ridiculous, and like a little interesting foray into how executes are actually coded in the game. They don't just kill you, they do 9,999 true damage. All auto attacks physical, build any item. This was way back in beta where even mages and guardians had physical auto attacks, and you could build any item on them. So if you did want to deal damage with basic attacks, you had to build physical power, even if you were a mage. So gods like Freya and Ymir, they could buy physical items, including Deathbringer, and so you'd have like Ymir stacking his passive with crit and stuff like that. It was pretty funny, but probably not super healthy for the game, in my opinion. Buying stats directly, this one's pretty interesting. Way back in beta, you could actually just buy stats directly from the shop. So like you didn't buy an item, you just said, oh, I want to buy 10% cooldown reduction for 1,000 gold, and you did it. Like, not tied to an item or anything like that. So theoretically, if the game went long enough, you could just get, you know, max of every stat, basically. I'm just imagining that with, like, match of the days nowadays where you get 100,000 gold. That would be pretty insane. You know, you buy your full build, and you'd also buy, like, a crap ton of, like, stats just directly from the shop. But tying into that, the games back then didn't go that long because there was a mechanic way back in the day where the Minotaurs would just walk up mid lane at a certain point. I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't find any like specific time that this happened, but I do know that it did happen. So obviously Minotaurs were all titans. I covered that further up the iceberg. They would basically just walk up mid and fight each other at a certain point in the game. It basically hard capped the time limit for conquest, which is pretty interesting. Obviously it's very much like a comeback mechanic because if you've destroyed all the enemy's towers, maybe you got a phoenix or something, and then you hit that point in the game where your titan just starts walking out and they've destroyed none of your towers. Obviously, you do have the benefit of like your Titan has more health and protections because that's how it works. The more towers and phoenixes you have, the tankier your Titan is. To prevent people just like rushing down one lane and just taking both towers and phoenix and killing your Titan. So you would still have the advantage, but it would be a little bit of a catch-up mechanic to give the enemy team like a chance to kill your Titan even though they've taken none of your towers. But I think it was pretty interesting, you know, a way to like kind of hard limit, because I don't think anyone enjoys really playing in 60-minute conquest games. Sometimes they can be fun, but they wear a lot of people out, and especially the casual player, they're not going to want to play an entire 60-minute conquest match. So having some ways to like hard cap it is kind of interesting, but I'm not sure if it really fits in today's conquest. But yeah, that was the Smite Iceberg. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I just thought it'd be a little interesting to do, a little twist on like delivering Smite facts, because I'm all about that. You know, I enjoy these like random obscure Smite history facts and stuff like that, and this felt like an interesting way to condense a lot of facts into one video. Let me know if there's any ones that caught your eye, some interesting ones that you didn't know about, and whether I did the levels correctly. You know, did you know less the further down you went, or did you know more the further down you went? I think in general, I got it pretty decent, but you never know. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.